Jim Oberwetter served as ambassador to Saudi Arabia under President George W. Bush. We are grateful to have your time. And hopefully you got to hear a little bit of my conversation with the congressman, because I want to tread some ground over that now with you.
Right.
What happens if there is evidence? I'm going to start again, because now, just in the last little while, there are reports of evidence that we could even learn about, detailed from the Turkish government, about the death of Khashoggi, this journalist. What happens if there's evidence that we can point to?
Well, let me just start by saying that I'm going to express sympathy with the family, too, of Khashoggi. Jamal was, in my view, it was unconscionable what happened to him. It's unconscionable what some Saudis have done to put the President of the United States in an unenviable position of having to discuss what amounts to be a murder with the King of Saudi Arabia. It's unbelievable. It's a very, believe me, it's a very sad turn, very sad state of affairs that's emerging with the death of Khashoggi.
I'm so glad that you started again, as the congressman mentioned as well, the Khashoggi family. Take me inside the mind of the crown, if you will, right now, the royalty of Saudi Arabia, because you know so well, having been ambassador to that country. What is going on in terms of trying to describe or determine or take responsibility or admit anything?
Well, I imagine there are some pretty furious discussions going on the inside of the royal court right now about how to handle this issue. The fact that Khashoggi died in a Saudi facility and that there clearly was premeditation involved means that someone is going to have to step up to the plate, and we need to find out who that was. I think finger pointing ahead of fact gathering is the wrong thing to do. And that is why I am so glad that President Trump decided to send the Secretary of State, who I would remind everyone is a former director of the CIA and has access to all kinds of information, to see the king and to see MBS, because he knows a lot about this that I believe has not been revealed. And when he meets them eye to eye and has the discussion about what has happened, I think they're going to be forthcoming with him.
That is an excellent point. Former CIA director, and that's who they are sitting across from, no doubt, that part of his history right now. Who's at the table for these tough conversations among that royalty? Take us into the regime.
Well, the regime is different than it was when I was there. It was a different time altogether.
Better?
And this was back in...
Different? Worse? How?
Well, the king at the time was King Abdullah, and King Abdullah had a very soft touch. He even created something called the National Center for Dialogue, so that Saudis could sit down and talk with each other, sometimes even with Shia, which is hard for them to do. And we've seen a sea change in what has occurred in the last 10 or so years in Saudi Arabia. And why has that occurred? I couldn't exactly begin to answer the question, but I would note that there has been a significant regime change.
And, you know, it's interesting because this MBS, as Senator Graham calls the Crown Prince, is responsible for basically what's been described as a shakedown of his fellow princes, getting him to come to a hotel. And what money do you owe Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think that he's a young prince. I think he started being handed the authority at a very tender age, age 30. And right now, I would say that he is struggling with the power that he holds in his hands.
Does he lose that power over this? I mean, is that something that could be on the table?
To me, I think that is an unknown. That would not be typical of someone who has been named the Crown Prince. But then the previous Crown Prince to be also is no longer at that table. So we'll see how it develops. But I do think that there are missteps that have been made, and I think that someone there is going to have to answer for it.
Well, there's a dead man, according to the Turks, and evidence that they say they have. So it's more than missteps. We'll find out what it is exactly. Ambassador, thank you for your time today.
You're very welcome.